Beneath the very ground we walk on, under oceans we sail, and deserts we cross, lie the silent, sprawling remains of worlds we once thought were only myths. Entire cities, bustling markets, towering temples, and complex societies all vanished, not into thin air, but into earth, into sand, into sea, waiting through centuries for their stories to be heard again. It's almost unimaginable, isn't it, that kingdoms which shaped human destiny now sleep forgotten, their voices muted by time, their innovations buried under layers of dust and doubt. Yet what if I told you that right now, we are living in a golden age of rediscovery, an era where advanced technology and relentless curiosity are pulling these lost civilizations back into the light. This is not just about archaeology, it's about rewriting history itself. In this video, we embark on a journey to map the unmapped and voice the voiceless. We'll walk through the echoing ruins of places like the Indus Valley, where an entire culture designed sewage systems and city grids with a precision that rivals modern engineering. We'll descend into sunken palaces off the coasts of India and Greece, where legends of Atlantis begin to feel less like myth and more like historical reality. And we'll decode the technologies of the ancients, how they moved multi-ton stones without wheels, predicted celestial events without telescopes, and created art that still breathes with life thousands of years later. This is a story of human ingenuity at its most profound, and it challenges everything we thought we knew about our past. But beyond the thrill of discovery, there's a deeper urgency here. Understanding these lost civilizations isn't just about satisfying curiosity, it's about recognizing our shared human heritage. These societies faced challenges startlingly similar to our own: climate shifts, resource scarcity, social upheaval. By studying how they rose, how they adapted, and why they fell, we gain invaluable insights into our own future. So come with me as we uncover the hidden architects beneath the sand, trace the footsteps of pioneers who dared to dig deeper, and reveal how modern science is piecing together the puzzles that have baffled historians for centuries. You're about to witness stories of grandeur, mystery, and resilience that don't just belong in history books, they belong to all of us. So what exactly do we mean when we talk about a lost civilization? It's more than just an old city or a forgotten town. It's an entire society, a complex web of human life that once thrived with its own government, culture, and technology, only to vanish so completely that its memory was erased from history itself. These are places that slipped through the cracks of time, often leaving behind only whispers in local legends or a handful of puzzling ruins that early explorers couldn't even begin to explain. Think about that for a moment. We're discussing cultures that built vast cities, engineered sophisticated water systems, traded across continents, and created art and belief systems that shaped their world, and then they were just gone. Their stories were buried not just under sand or jungle, but under layers of mystery. The forces that lead to such a complete disappearance are as varied as the civilizations themselves. Sometimes it was a dramatic, sudden catastrophe, a volcanic eruption like the one that buried the Minoan settlements on Thera, preserving a snapshot of life in ash. Other times it was a slow, grinding decline. Climate change, for instance, has been a recurring theme throughout human history. Prolonged droughts could have crippled the Akkadian Empire in Mesopotamia, turning fertile fields to dust and fracturing the social order. Warfare and invasion also played their part, with conquering armies often absorbing or erasing the cultures they defeated. but in many cases, it was likely a combination of factors, a perfect storm of environmental stress, economic collapse, and social unrest that ultimately caused a society to contract, disperse, or fade away entirely. What's truly captivating is how these stories resonate with us. There's a profound sense of mystery and a touch of melancholy that surrounds these lost worlds. They spark our imagination because they are real-life puzzles, grand and enigmatic. They force us to question the permanence of our own achievements. If a civilization as advanced and organized as the Indus Valley culture, with its meticulously planned cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, complete with standardized bricks and complex drainage systems, could vanish so completely that its very script remains undeciphered, what does that say about our own future? Their rediscovery in the 19th and 20th centuries completely upended the historical timeline, proving that sophisticated urban life in South Asia began 1,000 years earlier than previously believed. Similarly, the jungle-choked temples of the Khmer Empire in Cambodia, most famously Angkor Wat, were not always the tourist attractions we know today. For centuries, they were known only to locals, hidden by the relentless growth of the rainforest. When French explorer Henry Mauhat brought them to the Western world's attention in the 1860s, it was a revelation. The scale and artistry of the structures spoke of a powerful, wealthy, and incredibly sophisticated empire that once dominated Southeast Asia. Its decline is often linked to a combination of environmental mismanagement and climate shifts, which disrupted the elaborate water network that sustained its massive population. Each of these rediscoveries does more than just add a chapter to a history book. It fundamentally reshapes our understanding of human ingenuity, resilience, and vulnerability. These lost worlds are not mere footnotes. They are entire volumes of our shared story waiting to be read. Long before satellites could scan the Earth from orbit or ground-penetrating radar could reveal secrets hidden deep below the soil, the search for lost civilizations relied on something far more fundamental: sheer human determination. The stories of these early explorers read like something from an adventure novel, filled with peril, obsession, and moments of breathtaking discovery that would change history forever. These were not always trained academics. They were often driven by a mix of burning curiosity, personal ambition, and an unshakable belief in the truths buried within ancient myths. They ventured into uncharted jungles, crossed vast deserts, and contended with disease, political instability, and technological limitations that would be unthinkable today. Their greatest tool was often a simple belief that the stories of the past were waiting, quite literally, to be unearthed. Consider the legendary Heinrich Schliemann, a man whose life story is as layered as the ancient cities he sought. A successful businessman who taught himself over a dozen languages, Schliemann became utterly captivated by Homer's Iliad. While most scholars of his time considered Troy to be a purely mythological place, Schliemann took the epic at its word. He used the text itself as a map, poring over the geographical descriptions to pinpoint where he believed the city must lie in modern-day Turkey. With his own fortune funding the dig, he began excavating at a site called Hisarlik in the 1870s. His methods were, by modern standards, brutally destructive. He and his workers used massive trenches that bulldozed through younger layers of history to reach what he believed was the Homeric city. And then he found it, not just walls, but a spectacular hoard of gold jewelry and artifacts he famously dubbed Priam's treasure. While we now know he mistakenly identified an earlier layer as Homer's Troy, his dramatic discovery provided the first concrete proof that the Trojan War was not mere legend, but was rooted in a real, powerful Bronze Age civilization. On the other side of the world, a different kind of explorer was confronting the dense rainforests of Central America. John Lloyd Stevens, an American lawyer and diplomat, and his English artist companion, Frederick Catherwood, embarked on a series of expeditions in the 1830s and 40s that would introduce the Maya civilization to the world. Where Schliemann had ancient poetry as his guide, Stevens was working from faint rumors and cryptic references. The jungles of Yucatan, Honduras, and Guatemala were incredibly hostile, teeming with insects, riddled with malaria, and politically volatile. Their transportation was often little more than a mule train. What they found, however, was staggering. They stumbled upon immense stone pyramids poking through the canopy, ornate palaces smothered in vines, and towering stelae carved with intricate hieroglyphs and the faces of forgotten kings. Catherwood's role was absolutely vital. Armed with a camera lucida, a sophisticated optical device that helped him achieve near photographic accuracy, he produced beautifully detailed drawings of these ruins. His illustrations, published alongside Stevens's vivid written accounts in books like Incidents of Travel in Central America, Chiapas, and Yucatan, caused a sensation. For the first time, the Western world could see the astonishing artistic and architectural achievements of the Maya. These were not the crude works of primitive people, as many had assumed, but the legacy of a sophisticated culture with a complex understanding of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. Stevens and Catherwood didn't just find ruins, they fundamentally reshaped the perception of an entire continent's history, proving that grand civilizations had risen independently in the Americas. These pioneers operated with a fascinating blend of intuition and sheer grit. They lacked the precise dating methods we have today, like radiocarbon analysis, and their understanding of stratigraphy, the law of geological layers where older objects are buried deeper, was still in its infancy. They often focused on finding spectacular treasures and monumental architecture, sometimes at the expense of more mundane but equally important artifacts that could reveal details of daily life. Yet, for all their methodological shortcomings, their impact is undeniable. They ignited a global fascination with humanity's buried past. They proved that the world was far older and far more mysterious than recorded history suggested, and in doing so, they laid the essential groundwork for the scientific discipline of archaeology. They were the first to ask the questions we are still trying to answer, and their legacy is the very reason we continue to search for the whispers of lost worlds beneath our feet. The work of those early explorers was nothing short of heroic, but it was also like trying to read a book in a dark room with only a flickering candle. Today, archaeologists have switched on the lights. We are witnessing a technological revolution that is fundamentally transforming the field, allowing us to peer through dense jungle canopies, see deep into the desert sands, and scan the ocean floor without ever lifting a trowel. This isn't just an upgrade, it's a complete paradigm shift, moving from destructive digging to non-invasive discovery, and it's revealing a hidden world our predecessors could only dream of. At the forefront of this revolution is a technology called LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging. Imagine attaching a laser scanner to an airplane or a drone and flying it over a vast, impenetrable rainforest. The system fires millions of laser pulses every second down toward the ground. Most of these pulses are reflected back by the leaves and branches of the trees, but a lucky few manage to slip through the gaps, hit the solid ground beneath, and bounce back to the sensor. By meticulously filtering out all the returns from the vegetation, powerful computers can then create an astonishingly precise, three-dimensional map of the bare earth below. It's like digitally stripping away an entire forest to reveal the ancient landscape it has been hiding for centuries. This single tool has done more to advance our understanding of tropical civilizations in the last decade than a century of traditional archaeology could achieve. The most stunning example of LiDAR's power comes from the jungles surrounding Angkor Wat in Cambodia. For years, we understood this place as a magnificent temple complex, seemingly isolated in the wilderness. LiDAR surveys revealed the breathtaking truth: the jungle floor was not empty land, it was concealing the remnants of a vast, low-density urban sprawl. The maps showed an intricate network of roads, canals, neighborhoods, and smaller temples fanning out from Angkor for dozens of miles. It revealed a sophisticated water management system of reservoirs and channels that would have supported a massive population, perhaps as many as 750,000 people at its peak. This discovery didn't just add a few suburbs to a known city. It completely redefined Angkor as one of the largest pre-industrial urban centers on Earth, forcing us to completely rethink the scale, complexity, and eventual collapse of the Khmer Empire. But the technological toolbox doesn't end there. Satellite imagery, specifically a technique called multispectral analysis, allows archaeologists to see what the human eye cannot. Different materials retain and release moisture at different rates or have unique chemical signatures. By analyzing satellite images taken in wavelengths of light beyond the visible spectrum, researchers can detect subtle differences in soil and plant growth. A stone wall buried just beneath the surface will affect how much water the soil above it holds, which in turn affects how healthy the plants growing on it are. From space, these minute variations manifest as faint lines, geometric shapes, and patterns, ghostly outlines of ancient walls, roads, and entire settlements etched into the earth. This is how researchers are mapping the endless tracts of the Sahara Desert or the Mesopotamian plains, locating thousands of potential sites for further investigation with incredible efficiency. Ground-penetrating radar, or GPR, takes this power of seeing underground and makes it portable. This device is pushed along the surface like a lawnmower, sending radio waves into the ground and reading the signals that bounce back. Different materials and structures reflect these waves in unique ways, allowing operators to build a picture of what lies beneath. It's incredibly useful for investigating known sites without damaging them. In Italy, GPR has been used to map the complete plan of the Roman city of Falieri Novi without any excavation, revealing a level of urban detail from shops to plumbing that was previously unimaginable. In Egypt, it has been deployed around the Valley of the Kings, hinting at the possibility of undiscovered chambers and tombs waiting in the bedrock, whispering promises of future pharaonic secrets. Even the depths of the ocean are giving up their secrets. Advanced sonar systems, including multi-beam and side-scan sonar, create highly detailed maps of the seafloor, identifying unnatural shapes and anomalies that could be shipwrecks or sunken cities. Submersibles equipped with high-definition cameras and remote-operated vehicles then allow archaeologists to explore these sites in stunning detail. The discovery of the ancient city of Thonis Heracleion off the coast of Egypt is a prime example. Once a legendary port city, it vanished beneath the Mediterranean Sea over 1,000 years ago. Marine archaeologists led by Frank Gaudio used a combination of historical texts and systematic surveying to locate its ruins. They brought up spectacular statues, gold coins, and the remains of temples, physically pulling a lost legend back into the realm of history. This marriage of advanced technology and traditional archaeology is doing more than just finding new sites. It is fundamentally rewriting our history books. Every new map created by LiDAR, every hidden structure revealed by satellite, forces us to reassess the population densities, economic power, and engineering capabilities of ancient peoples. We are learning that many societies were far larger, more interconnected, and more resilient than we ever gave them credit for. We are moving from a history based on scattered fragments and lucky breaks to a comprehensive narrative built on vast, undeniable data. The Earth has been keeping a detailed record of human history all along. We are only now learning how to read it. Now, let's journey to a place that today defines the very idea of barren emptiness, the Sahara Desert. It's almost impossible to look out over those endless, rolling dunes and imagine anything but a timeless, lifeless sea of sand. But the Sahara holds one of history's greatest secrets. This desert was not always a desert. Just a few thousand years ago, it was a vast green savanna, a landscape crisscrossed by flowing rivers and dotted with deep, freshwater lakes. Herds of elephants, giraffes, and antelope roamed its grasslands, and this lush, inviting environment was home to vibrant human societies. Their story is a powerful testament to human ingenuity in the face of a changing world, and their rediscovery is one of modern archaeology's most thrilling chapters. For decades, the prevailing assumption was that any civilization existing in such a harsh environment must have been simple, isolated, and nomadic, mere waypoints for more advanced cultures around the Mediterranean. The idea of a complex urban society thriving in the heart of the Sahara seemed like a fantasy. That perception was completely shattered by the work of archaeologists like Professor David Mattingly and his team, who turned their attention to a people known from fragmented historical accounts as the Garamantes. Roman writers had described them as primitive and unruly barbarians, but the truth, buried under the sand, was far more impressive. The key to unlocking this mystery lay not in traditional excavation, but in the sky. Using declassified satellite imagery from Cold War spy programs and advanced radar scanning technology, researchers began to map the hidden anatomy of the desert. What they saw was astonishing. The blank canvas of the sand revealed faint, ghostly traces of human activity along straight lines that could only be man-made. These were the outlines of a vast, sophisticated network of underground irrigation channels, known as Fagara in Arabic. The Garamantes were not simple nomads, they were hydrological engineers. They tapped into ancient fossil water aquifers deep beneath the desert and built hundreds of these tunnels, some stretching for miles, to bring water to the surface and channel it to their fields. This wasn't just survival, this was desert agriculture on an industrial scale. This engineered abundance supported a civilization of staggering complexity. The satellite data and subsequent ground surveys revealed the remains of more than 10 major fortified towns, numerous villages, and sprawling cemeteries. The capital, Garama, was a city of multi-story mud-brick buildings, showing evidence of social stratification and centralized power, but perhaps most revealing was the evidence of their economic reach. The Garamantes were not isolated at all. They were the masters of a trans-Saharan trade network that connected the Mediterranean world with sub-Saharan Africa. Archaeological digs at these sites have uncovered Roman glass, copper artifacts from the Mediterranean, and ivory that originated deep in the African interior. They were trading salt and other goods across the desert, acting as the critical middlemen in a globalizing ancient economy. This incredible society did not vanish in a sudden catastrophe. Their decline is a slow, poignant story of a relentless environmental shift. The climate of the Sahara began to dry out, a process that started around 3,500 years ago and accelerated over the centuries. The fossil water reservoirs they depended on were not infinite. They were mining a non-renewable resource. As the water tables gradually fell, their intricate Fagara systems began to fail. The desert began to reclaim the green pockets they had so ingeniously created. The lessons here are profound and deeply relevant. the Garamantes present a powerful case study of a civilization that brilliantly adapted to a harsh environment, but ultimately faced a challenge of sustainability that they could not overcome. Their story, now being pulled grain by grain from the desert sands, forces us to completely rewrite the history of Africa and challenges every assumption we ever had about what is possible and what is lost beneath the shifting sands of time. The story of the Garamantes is a powerful reminder that the environment is not just a backdrop for human history. It is an active, often dominant character in the narrative. Across the globe and throughout time, climatic events have acted as silent architects of destiny, capable of nurturing the rise of magnificent empires and then, with a shift in the weather, conspiring to bury them under sand, silt, or simply the dust of oblivion. We often picture the fall of great civilizations in dramatic terms: barbarian hordes, volcanic eruptions, or epic battles. But for many, the end was far more insidious, a slow-motion unraveling triggered by a prolonged drought, a catastrophic flood, or the relentless creep of desert sands that choked off the very lifelines of society. Take the Akkadian Empire, history's first true empire, which around 2,300 years before the Common Era stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean, unifying the warring city-states of Mesopotamia under the rule of Sargon of Akkad. This was a superpower of the ancient world, a centralized state with a sophisticated bureaucracy and a mighty army, and then within a mere 100 years it utterly collapsed. For centuries, historians debated the reasons, pointing to internal rebellion or external invasion. But then, science provided a startling new clue. Paleoclimatologists, scientists who study past climates, drilling deep into the seabed of the Gulf of Oman, extracted core samples of ancient sediment. Within these layers of mud, they found a dramatic spike in mineral dust that could only have been carried by the wind from a great distance. The timing of this dust plume perfectly matched the empire's collapse. The story written in the mud was one of a devastating, multi-decade megadrought. The Fertile Crescent, the very cradle of civilization, had turned to dust. Crop yields would have plummeted, famine would have spread, and the social contract that held the empire together would have shattered under the strain. The mighty Akkadian Empire didn't fall to a sword, it likely starved to death. This kind of detective work is the heart of paleoclimatology, a field that uses natural archives to read the planet's old weather reports. Ice cores drilled from the ancient glaciers of Greenland and Antarctica are like time capsules, trapping tiny bubbles of the atmosphere from thousands of years ago, allowing scientists to measure past temperatures and greenhouse gas concentrations with incredible precision. The rings of long-lived trees like the bristlecone pine form a yearly diary of good and bad growing conditions, stretching back millennia. And layers of mud at the bottom of lakes and oceans, much like the sample from the Gulf of Oman, record everything from pollen counts that reveal what plants were thriving to chemical isotopes that indicate past rainfall patterns. By aligning these climate timelines with the archaeological record, we can now draw powerful and often heartbreaking correlations between environmental change and human history. Even the seemingly eternal civilization of ancient Egypt, sustained by the predictable rhythm of the Nile, was not immune to these planetary shifts. The Nile's annual flood was the engine of Egyptian life, depositing rich, fertile silt across the floodplain. A perfect flood meant a bumper harvest and a stable, prosperous kingdom. But ice core data and geological records from the Nile Delta show that the river was far less predictable than we once thought. Periods of consistently low floods or disastrously high ones coincide precisely with moments of profound crisis in Egyptian history. The fall of the Old Kingdom around 2100 years before the Common Era, a time of political fragmentation known as the First Intermediate Period, is now strongly linked to a series of catastrophic failures of the annual inundation, possibly triggered by a shift in monsoon patterns as far away as East Africa. The pharaoh's divine power was built on his ability to ensure abundance. When the Nile failed, his authority crumbled along with the granaries. This doesn't mean that climate change is a simple, one-size-fits-all explanation for collapse. It's rarely the sole cause. Instead, it acts as a threat multiplier, a colossal stressor that pushes a society's existing vulnerabilities to the breaking point. A kingdom already strained by overpopulation, resource inequality, or political infighting might have weathered a few bad years. But when a drought stretches into a generation, or when the rains never come at all, those internal cracks become catastrophic fissures. The climate provides the push, but the society's own structure determines how it falls. By reading these ancient climate proxies, we are not replacing human history with environmental determinism. We are adding a crucial, missing layer of understanding. We are learning that the fate of kings and commoners alike was, and still is, intimately tied to the rhythms of the natural world. A humbling lesson written in ice, stone, and mud for those who know how to look. While the shifting sands of the desert conceal one chapter of human history, the world's oceans guard an even more profound and enigmatic secret. For millennia, human societies have flourished along coastlines, building their greatest cities at the edge of the known world, harnessing the sea for trade, food, and connection. But the sea is a restless neighbor. Over thousands of years, as massive ice sheets melted at the end of the last glacial period, global sea levels rose by over 120 meters, swallowing millions of square kilometers of coastal land. This wasn't a slow, gentle process. It was a dramatic reshaping of the entire planet's geography, and it drowned countless settlements, ports, and entire cultures beneath the waves. These are not the stuff of pure myth, like Plato's allegorical Atlantis, but very real, tangible places that we are only now beginning to find. The quest to uncover these sunken worlds has given rise to an entirely new scientific discipline, marine archaeology. This is frontier science, combining deep-sea exploration with meticulous historical detective work. The tools of the trade are a far cry from the trowels and brushes of traditional digs. Modern marine archaeologists rely on side-scan sonar and multi-beam echosounders towed behind research vessels. These devices emit sound waves that travel through the water column and bounce off the seafloor, painting a detailed, three-dimensional picture of the bottom. They can identify unnatural shapes, the straight lines of a wall, the perfect rectangle of a building's foundation, or the distinct outline of a sunken ship amid the natural contours of sand and rock. Once a promising target is identified, the real exploration begins, often using remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, equipped with high-definition cameras and robotic arms, or by employing technical divers trained to work at extreme depths. The preservation of these sites can be nothing short of miraculous. On land, organic materials like wood, cloth, and food decompose rapidly, eaten by microbes and exposed to oxygen. Underwater, especially when buried in silt or clay, a site can be sealed in a near-perfect, oxygen-free time capsule called an anaerobic environment. Without oxygen, the bacteria that cause decay cannot survive. This is why discoveries from these underwater cities are so breathtakingly complete. We don't just find stone foundations, we find wooden tools that still have fingerprints in the resin, intact pottery with food remains inside, and even human skeletons lying exactly where they fell, offering an incredibly poignant and undisturbed snapshot of a single moment in time, frozen for thousands of years. Consider the ancient city of Pavloptri off the coast of southern Greece. Discovered in 1967, it is the oldest known submerged city in the world. dating back over 5,000 years to the Bronze Age. When archaeologists mapped it using cutting-edge underwater survey techniques, they found an entire urban plan remarkably preserved on the seabed. They could trace the lines of streets, the outlines of homes, courtyards, and tombs, a complete city layout that provides an unparalleled window into the daily life of a prehistoric Aegean community. The fact that it sank, likely due to a combination of seismic activity and rising seas, is a tragedy for its inhabitants, but for us, it's an invaluable gift, a time capsule that land-based sites of similar age could never hope to match. On the other side of the world, in the Gulf of Cambay off the western coast of India, sonar surveys revealed another massive underwater discovery. Large structures, including what appear to be the remains of a vast city, were detected in waters over 120 feet deep. Preliminary dredging brought up artifacts, pottery shards, stone tools, and even human bones that were controversially carbon dated to be as old as 9,500 years. While the site, often associated with the ancient legendary city of Dwarka from Hindu scriptures, is still the subject of intense debate and requires further study, it powerfully illustrates a compelling theory. It suggests that some of the areas first settled by humans as the last ice age ended are now dozens of meters underwater, holding clues to the very beginnings of urban life that we are only just beginning to appreciate. The forces that sent these cities to the bottom are as powerful as they are varied. The relentless, global rise in sea levels from melting glaciers is the most widespread culprit, slowly and inexorably drowning coastlines over centuries. But in geologically active areas like the Mediterranean, tectonic activity is a sudden and violent agent of destruction. An earthquake can cause large tracts of land to subside in a matter of minutes, dropping entire sections of a city below the waterline. Other times, a tsunami generated by an undersea quake can deliver a catastrophic 1-2 punch, first smashing a coastal settlement with immense waves and then causing the land to sink, allowing the sea to rush in and claim the ruins. What these sunken cities reveal is a profound story of human resilience and adaptation. They prove that our ancestors were master mariners and coastal engineers far earlier than we imagined. The discovery of sophisticated harbor works at submerged sites shows a deep understanding of ocean currents and maritime trade. Every artifact recovered from the silty deep tells us that these were not primitive outposts, but complex, networked societies whose lives were intimately tied to the sea. Their disappearance serves as a powerful and sobering reminder of the immense power of environmental change. They are a haunting legacy from a time of great global transition, a silent testament to the fact that a rising ocean has always been one of the greatest challenges human civilization has ever faced. Imagine the ultimate locked door behind which lies not treasure but understanding. This is the challenge of an undeciphered script. A lost civilization can leave behind magnificent temples, intricate art, and sprawling cities, but without a key to their written language, their thoughts, their laws, their very voices remain silent. They are a photograph without a caption, a melody without lyrics. Deciphering these ancient scripts is more than an academic exercise. It is the delicate art of listening for a whisper across millennia, of finding the combination to a lock that has been closed for centuries. The process is one of the most thrilling intellectual detective stories in all of science, a puzzle where the pieces are shattered clay tablets, and the only clues are the faint patterns etched upon them. The golden key, the one that gave us the template for all future decipherment, was, of course, the Rosetta Stone. Discovered in 1799 by French soldiers in Egypt, this dark slab of granodiorite was inscribed with the same decree in 3 different scripts: ancient Greek at the bottom, Demotic Egyptian in the middle, and the mysterious, beautifully pictorial Egyptian hieroglyphs at the top. Scholars at the time could read ancient Greek, and they immediately understood its immense potential. It was a bilingual inscription, a linguistic bridge. The Greek text acted as a rough translation guide, providing the general meaning of the hieroglyphic text, but it was still a monumental task. A young French scholar named Jean-François Champollion dedicated his life to it. He wasn't the first to try, but he was the one who made the critical breakthrough. He realized that the hieroglyphs were not just a series of simple pictograms, where a picture of a bird simply meant bird. Instead, he discovered they were a complex combination of phonetic signs that represented sounds, much like letters, and determinatives that clarified the meaning of a word. For example, the hieroglyph of a leg might represent the sound for B, but when placed next to the name of a person, it could indicate that the word was an action verb. Champollion's work, completed in 1822, didn't just unlock the history of ancient Egypt. It flung open the doors to 3,000 years of pharaonic records, from royal decrees to religious texts to mundane tax receipts, allowing a civilization that had been mute to finally tell its own story in its own words. This triumph set the stage for other decipherments, but each script presents its own unique and maddening set of challenges. Take, for instance, the elegant and complex glyphs of the Maya. For over a century after Stevens and Catherwood brought them to the world's attention, Mayan writing was considered impenetrable, a series of beautiful but meaningless pictures. The few attempts to understand it were wildly off base, often interpreting it as purely astronomical or religious. The real breakthrough began with a slow, methodical shift in perspective. A Russian scholar named Yuri Norisov, working in the 1950s, proposed a radical idea. He argued that the Maya system was like Egyptian hieroglyphs, a logosyllabic script. This means it used symbols to represent entire words, logograms, and other symbols to represent syllables, syllabograms. Norisov used the few existing colonial-era documents, like the Delanda alphabet, which attempted to match Mayan glyphs to Spanish letters as a starting point. He demonstrated that a single glyph could often be broken down into smaller, phonetic components. This was the crucial turning point. Later, archaeologists like David Stewart and Linda Scheel built on this foundation, painstakingly matching glyphs to known historical events recorded on stone stelae, such as the birth, accession, and death of specific kings. Gradually, the symbols began to form coherent sentences. We learned that the Maya weren't just recording esoteric rituals, they were writing detailed histories. Their glyphs tell of political alliances, bloody wars, dynastic successions, and the exploits of powerful rulers like Pakal the Great of Palenque. The stones began to speak, and they revealed a society obsessed with time, history, and the divine right of kings. Perhaps the most compelling modern decipherment story is that of Linear B, a script found on clay tablets at Knossos on Crete and at several sites on mainland Greece. For decades, it was one of the world's greatest linguistic puzzles. The script itself was clearly a form of writing, but the language it represented was completely unknown. Was it an early form of Greek, or was it a language lost to time, perhaps belonging to the mysterious Minoans? The man who solved the puzzle was not a stuffy academic in an ivory tower, but a brilliant, obsessed amateur, an architect named Michael Ventris. Ventris had been fascinated by Linear B since he was a schoolboy. He approached the problem with an architect's mind for patterns and systems. He used a statistical approach, analyzing the frequency and positioning of certain signs, looking for patterns that might indicate word endings or grammatical structures. He worked with classicist John Chadwick, and together they began to form a hypothesis. The key was a group of tablets that appeared to be inventories, listing commodities and numbers. Ventris noticed that certain words appeared only in certain locations, likely the names of cities. In a breathtaking leap of intuition, he assigned phonetic values to the signs based on the sounds of these suspected place names. To his astonishment, the signs began to form words that were recognizably an early form of Greek. He had done it. The language of the Linear B tablets was Greek, proving that Greek-speaking people were present at Knossos much earlier than anyone had believed. The tablets themselves, once decoded, were mundane lists of chariot wheels, sheep, and offerings of olive oil to the gods, but their mundanity was their power. They gave us an administrative receipt for the Bronze Age, a glimpse into the boring, bureaucratic, and utterly human workings of a Mycenaean palace economy that thrived over 3,000 years ago. Yet for every success story, there remains a haunting and tantalizing failure. The Indus Valley script, used by one of the world's earliest and most extensive urban civilizations, remains stubbornly undeciphered. Despite thousands of inscriptions on small seals and pottery, the average length of a text is only about 5 signs. This is simply not enough data for modern cryptographic techniques to get a firm grip. There is no Rosetta Stone, no bilingual inscription to provide a foothold. Scholars cannot even agree on the fundamental nature of the language it represents. Was it a form of early Dravidian, an Indo-European language, something else entirely? The script is a locked door without a keyhole, a constant reminder that for all our technological prowess, some voices from the past may choose to remain silent, guarding their secrets just beyond our reach. Each undeciphered script is an invitation, a challenge to future generations to listen a little more carefully, to think a little more creatively, and to never stop trying to hear the whispers of those who came before us. Yet for all the grandeur of these towering monuments, some of the most breathtaking architectural achievements were designed not to reach for the heavens, but to burrow deep into the earth. In the heart of modern-day Turkey, the rocky landscape of Cappadocia conceals an astonishing secret, not a city of spires, but a subterranean metropolis stretching up to 18 levels deep. These are not simple caves, they are complex, multi-level underground cities like Derinkuyu and Göbekli, complete with living quarters, stables for livestock, churches, wineries, and intricate ventilation shafts that provided fresh air to depths of nearly 300 feet. The engineering here is a masterpiece of reverse thinking. Instead of building up, the architects of Cappadocia excavated down, carving a labyrinthine refuge from the soft volcanic tuff rock. Massive circular stone doors weighing half a ton each could be rolled across passageways to seal off entire sections from invaders. This was architecture designed for survival, a hidden world that could shelter thousands of people for months at a time, revealing a society whose greatest innovation was its ability to disappear entirely from sight, prioritizing community safety and resilience above all else. This same principle of ingenious adaptation to a harsh environment is spectacularly evident in the rose-red city of Petra, carved directly into the sandstone cliffs of southern Jordan. While the famous treasury building is its most iconic image, Petra's true genius lies in what you can't easily see, its vast and sophisticated water management system. The Nabateans who built Petra were masters of hydrology in a parched desert landscape. They constructed a complex network of dams, cisterns, and terracotta pipes that channeled every precious drop of rainwater from the surrounding highlands. They carved canals along the sides of the narrow canyon, or sick, that serves as the main entrance to the city, effectively turning it into a monumental aqueduct that funneled water directly into the urban center. Their pipelines were designed with sediment traps to filter out sand and debris, and the pipes themselves used a unique locking mechanism that made them incredibly durable. This hydraulic engineering didn't just provide drinking water, it enabled agriculture, facilitated ritual purification in sacred pools, and most importantly, protected the city from the devastating flash floods that still roar through the desert wadis today. The Nabateans didn't fight their environment. They listened to it, understood it, and engineered a way to harness its power, turning a desert canyon into a thriving, lush oasis of trade and culture. What unites these diverse projects, from the death-defying peaks of Machu Picchu to the hidden depths of Derinkuyu, is a universal truth about these lost civilizations. Their architectural choices were a direct reflection of their worldview, their priorities, and their relationship with the forces they believed governed their lives. The Mesopotamian ziggurat, with its massive staircases leading priests ever closer to the gods, speaks of a society where religion and state power were utterly intertwined, where the ruler's primary role was to serve as an intermediary between the people and the divine. The perfect, seamless stonework of the Inca, which required no mortar yet has withstood centuries of earthquakes that have toppled modern buildings, reflects a cultural obsession with harmony, permanence, and a deep respect for the living rock they considered sacred. Perhaps the most humbling aspect of these marvels is the profound question of how they were accomplished. We have no blueprints, no engineering manuals from the builders of the Great Pyramid or the architects of Petra. The knowledge was passed down through generations of master craftsmen, a living tradition of applied physics and geometry that we can only reverse engineer. The experimental archaeology conducted by researchers like Mark Lehner in Egypt, who attempted to move massive stone blocks using ancient techniques, or by stonemasons in Cusco trying to replicate the perfect cuts of their ancestors, reveals that these were not primitive methods. They were incredibly sophisticated, leveraging levers, pulleys, water, sand, and an intimate understanding of materials that we are only beginning to fully appreciate. These structures stand as a permanent testament to human intellect and perseverance. They are not relics of a simpler time, but enduring monuments from an age of brilliant, innovative minds who looked at a landscape of stone and sand and saw not limits but infinite possibility. While we marvel at the grand scale of pyramids and the ingenuity of ancient aqueducts, it is often the smaller, more intimate objects that speak to us most directly across the centuries. A meticulously painted pot, a necklace of carved shells, the faint imprint of a fingerprint in a clay figurine. These are the artifacts that breathe life into the silent stones, offering us a window not into how these people built, but into how they lived, what they believed, and what they found beautiful. The cultural and artistic legacy of a lost civilization is its soul-preserved intangible form, a fragile echo of its world, you waiting to be heard. Perhaps no single discovery illustrates the power of art to convey cultural ambition more stunningly than the Terracotta Army of China. Found guarding the tomb of the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, this assemblage is far more than a collection of sculptures. It is a profound political and spiritual statement cast in clay. Each of the thousands of soldiers is unique, with individualized facial features, hairstyles, and expressions, reflecting an astonishing level of artistic investment and a belief in the emperor's continued authority in the afterlife. But look closer and the art reveals deeper truths. The figures were once painted in vibrant, lifelike colors, and they were arranged in precise military formations, complete with chariots and cavalry. This was not merely a memorial, it was a functional army for the next world, a manifestation of the emperor's power and his obsession with immortality. It tells us of a society capable of marshalling immense resources for a single ideological project, one that valued order, hierarchy, and the divine status of its ruler, forever captured in an artistic endeavor of breathtaking scale and detail. On the other side of the globe, the vibrant murals adorning the walls of Teotihuacan, known as the City of the Gods, offer a contrasting yet equally sophisticated narrative. Unlike the Terracotta Army, which was meant to be hidden, these paintings were public art displayed in the apartments and temples of this vast Mesoamerican metropolis. They depict a pantheon of gods: the feathered serpent, the great goddess, the storm god, engaged in rituals of offering and creation. The colors, derived from minerals and plants, remain remarkably vivid, outlining scenes of flowing water, blooming flowers, and priestly processions. This art is not about individual rulers. Teotihuacan seems to have purposefully avoided glorifying any single person. Instead, its murals communicate a shared religious identity, a cosmology that bound this diverse, multi-ethnic city together. The artwork served as a constant, visual reinforcement of the myths and beliefs that maintained social order, portraying a world in balance, sustained by ritual and sacrifice. It was a collective dream painted on stone, a guide to how an entire civilization understood its place in the universe. The mere survival of such delicate treasures, paintings, textiles, wooden objects for thousands of years is itself a minor miracle, one dictated by the quirks of their environment. The chemistry of preservation is a powerful, if unintentional, curator of history. In the arid, dry air of the Egyptian desert, the conditions are perfect for slowing decay. Tombs sealed and deprived of moisture and oxygen become incredible time capsules. This is how we have the exquisite funerary masks, the colorful beaded collars, and even the leftover food in bowls from pharaonic times. The lack of microbial activity in these dry environments means that organic materials that would vanish in a few decades in Europe can survive for millennia. Similarly, the anaerobic, oxygen-free environment of waterlogged peat bogs or deep-sea mud can perfectly preserve objects that would normally rot away. The astonishingly intact Viking ships recovered from Norwegian burial mounds are a testament to the preserving power of wet, compacted clay. In Central Asia, the frozen tombs of the Scythian nomads, interred in the permafrost of the Altai Mountains, have yielded felt rugs, elaborate horse tack, and even tattoos on the skin of the buried individuals, all in a state of preservation so complete it feels like they were interred only yesterday. These natural vaults have acted as guardians, protecting the most vulnerable aspects of a culture's legacy and granting us an unparalleled view into the textures, colors, and craftsmanship of daily life that stone alone can never provide. From the golden death masks of Mycenaean kings to the intricate jade carvings of the Olmecs, these artistic remnants do more than just showcase skill. They are a language without words. A pattern on a pot can tell us about trade routes, as styles and techniques were borrowed and adapted across continents. The choice of materials, obsidian from a distant volcano, shells from a faraway sea, speaks volumes about economic networks and what was valued. A scene painted on a wall can reveal details of clothing, musical instruments, and dance rituals that no written record could ever capture with such immediacy. Each artifact is a thread, and when woven together, they form the rich, complex tapestry of a people's identity, their fears, their hopes, and their unique way of seeing the world. They remind us that these were not anonymous builders of ruins, but individuals who appreciated beauty, celebrated life, and faced mortality with a desire to be remembered, leaving behind their most fragile and therefore most human creations for us to find. We often picture ancient civilizations as isolated worlds, each developing in its own bubble, cut off from the rest of the globe by vast, impassable oceans and endless mountain ranges. But this image is a modern illusion. The truth is far more fascinating. For thousands of years, our ancestors were intrepid globalizers, weaving a complex web of trade routes that connected the farthest corners of the known world. This was not a simple barter of local goods. It was a sophisticated economic system of staggering scale and complexity, a prehistoric internet of ideas, luxuries, and innovations that moved across continents with a speed that would have been unimaginable just a few decades ago. The evidence for this ancient globalization is not hidden in grand monuments, but in the small, portable objects that traveled with merchants and migrants, waiting in the soil for us to find. Consider the humble coin, a symbol of a state's authority and economic power. Finding one far from its place of origin is a powerful clue to these hidden connections. On the southeastern coast of India, archaeologists have repeatedly unearthed hoards of Roman gold and silver coins, particularly from the time of Emperor Augustus. These coins were not lost by a stray legionnaire. Rome never conquered India. Their presence tells a different story. They were likely payment for immense quantities of priceless Indian luxuries: pepper, precious gems, ivory, and fine textiles that were craved by the elite of Rome. Roman writers like Pliny the Elder even complained about the vast sums of Roman wealth draining east to pay for these indulgences. This was not a one-way street. In a Roman port city like Pompeii, archaeologists have found Indian-made pottery, and in Egypt, mummies from the same era have been wrapped in cloth made from Chinese silk. These fragile threads of fabric and shattered pieces of pottery are the receipts of a global economy, proving that a merchant in Han Dynasty China could produce a luxury good that would eventually adorn a wealthy citizen in Italy, all without either person having the faintest idea of the other's existence. The most famous of these routes is, of course, the Silk Road, but it's crucial to understand that this was not a single, well-paved highway. It was a sprawling, shifting network of overland trails and desert oases, a relay race of commerce where goods changed hands countless times between different cultures and middlemen. A bolt of silk might begin its journey in a Chinese workshop, be carried by Central Asian nomads across the treacherous Taklamakan Desert, sold to Persian merchants in the great trading cities of Samarkand or Bukhara, and finally be acquired by a Roman trader in Antioch before being shipped across the Mediterranean. But this network dealt in far more than just silk. It was a conduit for technologies like papermaking and stirrups that moved west from China, while glass-blowing techniques and new religious ideas like Buddhism moved east. It was also, tragically, a highway for disease. Many historians now believe the devastating plague of Justinian, which wiped out millions in the Byzantine Empire in the 6th century, likely traveled along these same trade routes from its origins in Central Asia. While the Silk Road captures our imagination, we must not forget the maritime superhighways that operated alongside it. For centuries, skilled sailors harnessed the monsoon winds of the Indian Ocean, creating a circuit of incredible efficiency. From ports on the Red Sea, Roman and later Arab ships would catch the summer monsoon to sail east to India. They would trade their goods, wait for the winds to reverse in the winter, and then ride them back home. This system connected the entire rim of the Indian Ocean, from East Africa to the Arabian Peninsula, India, and all the way to Southeast Asia. The spice islands of modern-day Indonesia were the source of cloves and nutmeg, spices so valuable they were worth their weight in gold. These spices fueled empires and financed voyages of discovery, all because of this ancient understanding of wind and current. Mapping these intricate networks does more than just satisfy our curiosity about the past. It fundamentally rewrites our understanding of human history. It shows that innovation was rarely the product of a single genius in an isolated culture. Instead, it was often the result of cross-pollination. The mathematical concept of zero, for instance, seems to have traveled from ancient Indian thinkers to the Islamic world and then into Europe, revolutionizing mathematics everywhere it went. The astrolabe, a sophisticated navigation tool, was refined by Arab scholars using Greek principles and then passed on to European sailors. By tracing the paths of artifacts, we can trace the paths of ideas. We see that our ancient ancestors were not isolated tribes but participants in a vibrant, interconnected world, facing the same challenges of globalization, economic interdependence, the spread of ideas, and the risk of pandemic that we grapple with today. Their world was not smaller than ours, their connections were just woven with different threads. For centuries, the golden city of El Dorado shimmered just beyond the reach of European conquistadors, a tantalizing legend whispered along jungle rivers and mountain passes. It was a place where a king, coated in gold dust, would ritually wash his riches into a sacred lake, a story so vivid it drove countless expeditions to obsession and ruin. On the surface, it seems like pure fantasy, a classic tale of a mythical land of untold wealth. But what if this legend, like so many others, wasn't invented from whole cloth? What if it was a distorted memory, a glittering echo of a real cultural practice that, over time and through translation, grew into something larger than life? This is the fascinating space where myth and archaeology collide, a gray area where whispered stories passed down through generations sometimes guide us to profound historical truths. The most famous example of a legend becoming reality is without a doubt the story of Troy. For centuries, Homer's Iliad was considered a beautiful work of epic poetry, but nothing more. The city of Troy, the beautiful Helen, the Trojan horse, these were seen as allegorical fictions, not historical events. Then came Heinrich Schliemann, a man driven by a literal belief in the story. Using the text itself as his guide, he began digging in modern-day Turkey and, against all scholarly expectation, found it. He uncovered a layered city that had been destroyed by war and fire, exactly as the epic had described. His methods were crude and destructive by today's standards, but his discovery was monumental. It proved that a story sung for millennia contained a core of historical truth. The Trojan War may not have unfolded exactly as Homer described, but the city was real, the conflict was likely real, and the epic was a cultural memory of a catastrophic event from the Bronze Age. A myth had been transformed into a chapter of history. A more recent, and perhaps even more revolutionary, discovery comes from the dusty hills of southeastern Turkey. For generations, the local Kurdish herders referred to a certain hill as Göbekli Tepe, or Potbelly Hill, thinking little of the odd, T-shaped stones that occasionally poked through the soil. There was no local legend of a great temple there. It was simply part of the landscape. When German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt began excavating in the 1990s, he uncovered something that would fundamentally challenge one of archaeology's core beliefs. Göbekli Tepe is a vast complex of carved stone pillars arranged in circles, each pillar weighing tons and covered in intricate reliefs of animals. The astonishing part is its age. It was built around 11,600 years ago, a staggering 6,000 years before Stonehenge and thousands of years before the invention of agriculture, pottery, or permanent settlement. According to traditional theory, it was only after humans settled down to farm that they had the surplus time, resources, and social organization to build monumental religious structures. Göbekli Tepe turns that idea on its head. It suggests that it was the need to come together to build and maintain this sacred site that may have spurred the development of agriculture and settled life. There was no myth pointing to it, but its discovery has forced us to create a new origin myth for civilization itself, one where religion and communal effort came first. So why are we, as a species, so powerfully drawn to these stories of lost cities and golden kingdoms? The answer lies deep in our psychology. Myths and legends serve as foundational narratives. They explain our origins, validate our cultures, and warn us of our follies. They are containers for collective memory, often preserving a seed of truth even as the details are embellished over centuries. The story of a great flood is found in countless cultures around the world, from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the story of Noah. While there may not have been a single global deluge, archaeologists and geologists have found evidence of catastrophic regional flooding events at the end of the last ice age that would have been absolutely devastating to the local populations. These real disasters became the raw material for universal stories of divine punishment and rebirth. We are drawn to these tales because they speak to fundamental human experiences: catastrophe, hope, and the quest for meaning. This powerful allure is what transforms myth into motivation. The legend of Prester John, a mythical Christian king ruling a wealthy kingdom in the East, drove European explorers to traverse unknown continents, hoping to find a powerful ally. While they never found his kingdom, their searches inadvertently mapped vast portions of Africa and Asia, leading to real-world geographical knowledge. The quest for El Dorado, while often tragic and exploitative, ultimately led explorers deep into the Amazon and the Andes, where they encountered very real and incredibly sophisticated cultures, like the Muisca people of Colombia. The Muisca did indeed have a ritual involving a leader covered in gold dust who made offerings into a sacred lake, a practice that was the almost certain nucleus of the El Dorado legend. The gold-hungry conquistadors missed the true meaning of the ritual, but their pursuit, sparked by a myth, led them to a real civilization whose practices they barely understood. This is the enduring dance between imagination and inquiry. The myth provides the spark, the dream of something more. Archaeology provides the method, the trowel and the brush that carefully separate the glittering fiction from the priceless, often more fascinating historical truth. For all the thrill of discovery and the profound insights it offers, archaeology carries an immense responsibility. The very act of unearthing the past can, if done carelessly, damage or destroy it forever. This is why the field has undergone a profound transformation, moving from a practice often synonymous with treasure hunting and colonial extraction to one increasingly guided by a strict ethical code. Today, the most important question isn't just what we can find, but how we should find it, and who the past truly belongs to once it's brought into the light. At the heart of this ethical awakening is the principle of cultural heritage protection. An archaeological site is a non-renewable resource. Once a layer of soil is removed, that context is lost irrevocably. Modern archaeologists therefore prioritize minimal intervention. Techniques like LiDAR and ground-penetrating radar are favored because they allow us to map and understand a site without ever breaking ground. When excavation is necessary, it is painstakingly slow and meticulously documented, with every artifact's precise location recorded in 3 dimensions. The goal is no longer to simply extract the most spectacular objects for museum display, but to preserve the entire site as a coherent piece of historical data for future generations, who will undoubtedly have even better technologies and questions than we do. This shift directly fuels one of the most heated and ongoing debates in the cultural world: the repatriation of artifacts. For centuries, museums in Europe and North America filled their galleries with treasures acquired under the power dynamics of colonialism or through unscrupulous looters. The Parthenon marbles, also known as the Elgin marbles, are perhaps the most famous example. These stunning sculptures were removed from the Acropolis in Athens in the early 19th century by Lord Elgin, then the British ambassador to the Ottoman Empire, which controlled Greece at the time. They have been a centerpiece of the British Museum for 200 years, while Greece has built a state-of-the-art museum at the foot of the Acropolis expressly to house them, requesting their return for decades. The argument hinges on questions of ownership, preservation, and cultural identity. Is it better for such treasures to be in a universal museum where they are seen by a global audience, or should they be returned to their place of origin, reconnecting them to the landscape and people from which they sprang? This is not an isolated case. Institutions are increasingly facing claims from nations like Egypt, Nigeria, and Mexico for the return of their cultural patrimony, forcing a long overdue reckoning with the often problematic origins of their collections. Closely tied to this is the devastating global problem of looting. The illegal antiquities trade is a multi-billion-dollar black market, often funding organized crime and even terrorism. Looters are not archaeologists, they are thieves who ravage sites with bulldozers and shovels, tearing artifacts from the ground with no regard for their context. A beautiful vase in a private collection, stripped of its provenance, becomes a mere decorative object. Its scientific value, what it could have told us about trade, dating, or daily life, is destroyed forever. Every time a looted artifact is purchased, no matter how legitimate the gallery may seem, it fuels this cycle of destruction, erasing irreplaceable pages from the book of human history before they can ever be read. To combat this and to ensure archaeology is a force for good, the field is increasingly embracing the principle of community collaboration. The old model of a foreign team swooping in, digging up a country's heritage, and shipping the best finds back home is rightly seen as outdated and exploitative. Modern ethical practice insists on involving local and indigenous communities from the very beginning. This means hiring and training local workers, not just as laborers but as full partners in the research. It means respecting indigenous knowledge and oral histories, which can provide invaluable clues and context that external archaeologists might miss. Most importantly, it means asking communities what they want from a project and ensuring the benefits educational opportunities, economic development through sustainable tourism, and a renewed sense of cultural pride are shared. Archaeology is finally learning that it is not just about studying people of the past, but about working respectfully with their living descendants. This collaborative spirit extends to the challenge of managing tourism. A major discovery can bring an economic windfall to a region, but an unmanaged flood of visitors can love a site to death. The ancient plaster of tombs can be damaged by the humidity of thousands of breaths, and priceless floors can be worn away by countless footsteps. The ethical response isn't to lock sites away, but to manage access creatively. This can mean building viewing platforms that protect fragile structures, implementing ticketing systems that control visitor numbers, or creating stunning virtual reality experiences that allow people to explore a sensitive site without physically entering it. The goal is sustainable tourism, preserving the magic of a place not just for today's visitors, but for the visitors of tomorrow, ensuring that these windows into the lost worlds we've worked so hard to uncover remain open for centuries to come. While we carefully excavate the past in remote deserts and deep jungles, a far more immediate and relentless threat is unfolding right beneath our feet, in the very heart of our modern cities. The relentless march of progress, the construction of new subway lines, the pouring of foundations for skyscrapers, the expansion of farmland, and the laying of gas pipelines is in a constant, often destructive, race against time with the buried history it unknowingly disturbs. This is the quiet crisis of urbanization, where the machinery of the future is constantly scraping away at the fragile archives of the past, often erasing irreplaceable chapters of the human story before we even know they are there. The regions that gave birth to civilization are now some of the most vulnerable. In Mesopotamia, the very cradle of urban life in modern-day Iraq and Syria, the pressure is immense. The fertile land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, which sustained the Sumerians, Akkadians, and Babylonians, is still incredibly productive farmland. But deep plowing and the installation of modern irrigation systems can churn through the upper layers of soil, shattering delicate pottery, scattering ancient bones, and obliterating the subtle outlines of mud-brick walls that have endured for 5,000 years. Even more destructive is the rapid, often unplanned, expansion of cities like Baghdad or Mosul, where the urgent need for housing and infrastructure can trump cultural preservation. The construction of a new school or a hospital, while vital for the community, might unknowingly be built directly on top of a Neo-Assyrian palace or an early Islamic settlement, its secrets pulverized by excavators and paved over by concrete. Paradoxically, this same process of development sometimes leads to incredible, accidental discoveries, presenting a bittersweet dilemma. There is no better example of this than Rome, a city built layer upon layer like a historical lasagna. The city's motto, Roma sit a stratificata, stratified city, is a literal truth. Every time workers dig a new tunnel for the metro or repair a sewer line, they risk hitting an archaeological surprise. The construction of Rome's Metro Line C has been a decades-long archaeological excavation in itself, repeatedly delayed by spectacular finds. Digging just a few meters down, engineers have encountered ancient Roman homes complete with mosaics, a military barracks from the 2nd century, and even a sprawling imperial commercial complex. Each discovery is a windfall for historians, but a logistical and financial nightmare for city planners. It forces a difficult choice: preserve the find in situ, dramatically altering the construction plans, or meticulously excavate and document it under immense time pressure, a process known as salvage or rescue archaeology. This constant tension between preserving the past and building for the future is a defining challenge of living in an ancient world. So how do we navigate this conflict? The solution lies in weaving archaeology directly into the fabric of urban planning, making it a proactive step rather than a reactive obstacle. The first and most powerful strategy is the use of non-invasive surveying technologies before a single shovel hits the ground. Techniques like ground-penetrating radar are perfect for this. City planners can now commission wide-area GPS surveys of a proposed construction zone. This creates a subsurface map that can reveal anomalies, the telltale rectangular shapes of building foundations, the linear patterns of old roads, or the circular signatures of storage pits. If these features are detected, archaeologists can be brought in to conduct targeted, careful excavations long before the heavy machinery arrives. This transforms the process from a crisis of unexpected discovery into a managed scientific investigation. It saves time, money, and most importantly, protects the archaeological record. Beyond technology, the key is legislation and collaboration. Forward-thinking governments are implementing laws that require archaeological assessments to be a mandatory part of the planning permission process for any major development project. This creates a partnership between developers and archaeologists from day one. In places like the United Kingdom, this system has been highly successful. Archaeologists work alongside construction teams, monitoring groundbreaking activities and ready to jump in the moment something is found. This doesn't have to mean cancellation. Often, it means a slight redesign. A building's foundation piles might be shifted a few meters to the left, or a basement might be made slightly shallower to avoid a critical layer. This collaborative approach recognizes that both development and preservation are essential for a society that values both its future and its past. By making archaeology a planned part of progress, we can ensure that our modern cities don't just grow upward, but also remember to protect the deep, foundational layers of history that make them truly great. While we grapple with protecting the past from modern construction, an even more pervasive and insidious threat is accelerating at a global scale, one that respects no boundaries and threatens every corner of our shared heritage. The very climate that once buried and preserved these ancient sites is now turning against them, acting as a powerful and relentless agent of destruction. Rising global temperatures, climbing sea levels, and an increasing frequency of extreme weather events are not just future concerns for environmentalists. They are a present and clear danger to the physical record of human history, erasing irreplaceable chapters at an alarming rate. This is a race against a clock that is ticking faster every day, a silent crisis unfolding from the frozen Arctic to the sun-baked deserts. Perhaps the most visually dramatic impact is happening along the world's coastlines. For thousands of years, the slow, gentle process of sea level rise after the last ice age submerged ancient ports and settlements, often sealing them in protective layers of silt. Today, that process has become a violent and rapid assault. The increased energy from a warmer climate is supercharging storms, creating more powerful waves and storm surges that batter and undermine coastal sites. In Scotland, the prehistoric Neolithic settlement of Sahara, a stunning stone-built village older than the pyramids, is facing an existential threat from increasingly severe North Sea storms that are eroding the very coastline that protects it. Similarly, in the United States, historic colonial-era sites like Jamestown, Virginia, are experiencing frequent flooding, with saltwater intrusion slowly eating away at centuries-old brickwork and fortifications. The water isn't just lapping at their doors, it is actively dismantling them wave by destructive wave. The threat is equally dire, though less visible, in the planet's frozen regions. The Arctic permafrost has been a miraculous deep freeze for organic materials for millennia. Sites across Alaska, Canada, and Siberia contain incredibly well-preserved artifacts made of wood, leather, textiles, and even human remains, complete with tattoos and clothing. As global temperatures rise, this permafrost is thawing at an unprecedented rate. When these organic materials are exposed to oxygen and microbes after thousands of years, they don't just slowly decay, they can decompose at a breathtaking pace, turning to mush within a few years of exposure. We are losing a unique and fragile record of ancient Arctic cultures, from the tools of the Dorset people to the settlements of early Inuit hunters, in a matter of seasons. It's like a museum vault suddenly unlocking and watching its most delicate treasures crumble to dust before we can even catalog them. In arid regions, the danger comes from the opposite extreme. Intensifying droughts and heat waves are desiccating ancient mudbrick structures, causing them to crack and crumble. Then, when the rare but intense rainstorms do arrive, they deliver a devastating blow. The sudden deluge turns the dry, fragile earth into flowing mud, washing away entire layers of archaeological deposits in flash floods. This cycle of extreme drying and wetting is catastrophic for sites built from earth, which includes some of the world's earliest cities in Mesopotamia. Furthermore, shifting climate patterns are creating new conditions that encourage biological attacks. Increased humidity in some previously stable tombs can lead to rampant mold growth, destroying priceless painted murals and inscriptions that have survived for thousands of years. Confronted with this global emergency, archaeologists and heritage specialists are not standing idly by. They are launching a multi-pronged rescue operation, often dubbed salvage archaeology or emergency preservation. One of the most powerful tools in this new arsenal is digital preservation. Initiatives like the Safeguarding Endangered Cultural Heritage Project employ cutting-edge technology to create a high-fidelity digital twin of a threatened site. Using a combination of drone photography, laser scanning, and photogrammetry, they can create a perfect three-dimensional record of a structure down to the millimeter. This digital model becomes a permanent archive, allowing for virtual study and even future reconstruction if the physical site is lost. It's a heartbreaking but necessary form of triage, acknowledging that we cannot always save the physical object, but we can and must save its memory. Alongside digital efforts, teams are conducting emergency excavations at sites deemed most critically endangered. This is archaeology under pressure, a far cry from the slow, methodical digs of the past. The goal is not to answer a specific research question, but to rapidly recover as much information as possible before it vanishes forever. In Greenland, archaeologists are literally chasing the melting ice, racing to recover organic artifacts emerging from retreating glaciers. In coastal Louisiana, teams are working desperately to excavate Native American sites along the Mississippi Delta that are disappearing into the Gulf of Mexico due to a combination of subsidence and sea level rise. These are not ideal conditions for science, but they are a necessary response to an unfolding catastrophe. This urgent work does more than just save artifacts. It forges a profound and sobering link between the past and the present. The very climate changes that now threaten these sites are often the same forces that contributed to the collapse of the civilizations they represent. Studying the remains of a society undone by a centuries-long megadrought takes on a new, urgent resonance when we ourselves are facing a climate crisis. These sites become more than just historical curiosities. They are stark reminders of human vulnerability in the face of environmental shifts. The race to document them is a race to understand the full spectrum of human adaptation and resilience, lessons that are becoming more critical with each passing day. The loss of any one site is a tragedy, but the widespread loss of our collective cultural memory to climate change would be an immeasurable catastrophe for all of humanity. For centuries, archaeology was often seen as an exclusive club, a discipline reserved for academics with degrees and specialists working in remote, exotic locations. The idea that an ordinary person could make a meaningful contribution to the field seemed far-fetched, but that old image is crumbling faster than a sun-baked mud brick. We are now in the midst of a thrilling democratization of discovery, where the combined curiosity of the global public is becoming one of the most powerful tools in the modern archaeologist's kit. This isn't about replacing experts, it's about amplifying their efforts through a movement known as citizen science, turning millions of passionate amateurs into a vast, distributed research network capable of tackling projects of a scale that would have been impossible just a generation ago. The engine of this revolution is often a computer screen. Digital platforms have completely dismantled the geographical and logistical barriers that once kept the public at a distance. One of the pioneers in this field is a website called Zooniverse, which hosts a huge array of scientific projects that anyone with an internet connection can contribute to. The premise is brilliantly simple. Researchers upload massive datasets, often thousands or even millions of satellite images or aerial photographs, that would take a small team of graduate students a lifetime to analyze. They then create a brief online tutorial that teaches volunteers what to look for: the subtle, straight lines of a buried wall, the circular depression of a potential tomb, or the faint, geometric shadow that might signal an ancient structure. Armchair archaeologists from around the world can then log on and start scanning these images, tagging any features that catch their eye. The magic is in the crowdsourcing. When dozens of people independently flag the same anomaly on a map, it transforms from a speculative maybe into a high-priority target for professional ground truthing. This is the wisdom of the crowd in action, a collective human pattern recognition machine that even the most advanced algorithms struggle to match. The success stories born from this digital collaboration are staggering. In Portugal, a retired lawyer named Rogério Correia was casually browsing satellite imagery on Google Earth when he noticed a peculiar set of symmetrical shadows in a field. Intrigued, he contacted local archaeologists who initially were skeptical, but Correia persisted and eventually a geophysical survey was conducted. The result, the team uncovered the remains of a massive Roman villa complex, complete with a central courtyard, intricate mosaics, and a sophisticated bathhouse. This wasn't just a few scattered stones, it was a major discovery, all because one curious person knew how to look. Across the UK, a project called MicroPasts enlisted thousands of online volunteers to digitally transcribe and catalogue vast archives of excavation diaries and museum records from the Bronze Age. This tedious but vital work, which would have taken a single researcher decades, was completed in a fraction of the time, making this priceless data searchable and available for new research, effectively freeing it from the confines of dusty filing cabinets. For those who want to get their hands dirty in the most literal sense, archaeological field schools offer an incredible immersive experience. These are not casual tourist digs. They are organized, educational programs run by professional archaeologists that welcome people from all walks of life: students, teachers, retirees, and anyone with a passion for the past. Participants receive training in proper excavation techniques, artifact handling, and recording methods. They work alongside experts, not just as laborers, but as genuine contributors to the scientific process. The thrill of carefully brushing away soil to reveal a pottery shard that hasn't been touched by human hands in 2,000 years is an experience that forges a deep, personal connection to history. It transforms abstract dates in a textbook into a tangible, physical reality. These programs are a vital pipeline, not only for gathering data, but for fostering a new generation of advocates who understand the meticulous care and respect that true archaeology demands. Beyond the digital and the physical, there is also the power of local knowledge. Often, the people who have the most intimate understanding of a landscape are those who have lived on it for generations. Farmers plowing their fields are frequently the first to uncover ancient artifacts. Hikers and birdwatchers, with their keen eyes attuned to the subtleties of the terrain, often spot earthworks or unusual stone arrangements that might be missed by someone just passing through. The key is creating channels for this knowledge to be shared. Organizations like the Portable Antiquities Scheme in England and Wales provide a fantastic model. It encourages metal detectorists and other finders to report their discoveries to experts for recording, rather than fear confiscation. This collaboration has led to the documentation of over 1 million finds, from prehistoric axe heads to medieval coins, dramatically enriching the historical map of the region and turning hobbyists into vital partners in preservation. This wave of public involvement is doing more than just accelerate discoveries. It is fundamentally changing the relationship between archaeology and the community it serves. It fosters a sense of shared ownership and collective guardianship over our cultural heritage. When people participate in uncovering the past, they develop a powerful stake in protecting it. They become the eyes and ears on the ground, more likely to report threats like looting or unauthorized development. They become ambassadors who can communicate the value and excitement of archaeology to their friends and families, building a broader base of support for conservation efforts. This breaks down the old ivory tower model and rebuilds archaeology as a collaborative conversation. a shared endeavor between experts and the public to piece together the story of us all. The invitation is open. You don't need a doctorate to help write the next chapter. Imagine being able to stand in the bustling forum of ancient Rome, hear the echoes of merchants in a Babylonian market, or witness the vibrant frescoes of Pompeii in their original, sun-drenched glory, all without ever leaving your home. This is no longer the realm of science fiction. It is the breathtaking new reality of digital archaeology. We've moved far beyond static drawings and artists' impressions. Today, a powerful suite of technologies is allowing us to not just study the past, but to experience it, to walk through meticulously reconstructed lost worlds with a level of immersion and accuracy that was unimaginable even a decade ago. This revolution is powered by two key techniques that act as the eyes and ears of the digital archaeologist. The first is laser scanning, specifically a method known as LiDAR, which we've already seen can map entire landscapes from the air. But on the ground, tripod-mounted terrestrial laser scanners perform a different kind of magic. They work by firing millions of laser points at a structure, let's say the intricate facade of a Maya temple shrouded in jungle. Each point measures the exact distance to the surface it hits, and when combined with the millions of other points, it creates an incredibly dense point cloud, a perfect digital record of every crack, carving, and contour of the stone. This isn't a photograph, it's a measurable, three-dimensional dataset accurate down to the millimeter. The second technique, photogrammetry, is almost like digital sculpting from photographs. Researchers take hundreds, sometimes thousands, of overlapping high-resolution photographs of an object or a site from every possible angle. Powerful software then analyzes these images, matching common points between them to calculate depth and spatial relationships, stitching them all together into a photorealistic 3D model. The true power comes when these two methods are combined. The laser scan provides the perfect geometric skeleton, and the photogrammetry drapes over it the skin, the authentic colors and textures captured by the camera. The result is a digital twin so precise it can be used to take measurements more accurately than with a tape measure, or to study the microscopic tool marks left by an ancient craftsman. The applications for research are profound. For the first time, we can study the most fragile sites without the risk of causing any damage. Take the Lascaux cave in France, home to some of the most stunning Paleolithic art ever discovered. The cave was closed to the public decades ago because the breath and body heat of visitors were causing algae to grow and degrade the 17,000-year-old paintings. But now, through a perfect laser-scanned and photogrammetric replica known as Lascaux 4, anyone can take a virtual tour that is arguably more detailed than the original experience. You can zoom in on a charging bison, examine the pigments, and follow the artist's brushstrokes without ever threatening their preservation. This technology also allows for incredible analytical possibilities. Scholars can manipulate light sources within a 3D model of an Egyptian temple to see how sunlight would have interacted with specific carvings on the summer solstice, testing theories about ancient astronomical alignments without waiting for a specific day of the year. They can digitally unfold a crumbled scroll or virtually lift a fragile mosaic from the ground to see what lies beneath, all without touching the precious original. This digital preservation is crucial, but the real magic for the public lies in how these models are brought to life. This is where virtual and augmented reality enter the stage, transforming data into experience. With a VR headset, you are no longer a passive observer looking at a screen. You are an active participant inside the simulation. Projects like the one recreating the ancient Roman Forum allow you to stand in the central plaza, look up at the towering temple of Jupiter, hear the ambient sounds of the city, and truly grasp the overwhelming scale and grandeur that defined the heart of the Roman Empire. It's an empathetic leap across centuries, fostering a deeper understanding that a textbook paragraph simply cannot convey. Augmented reality, or AR, layers the past onto the present. Using a smartphone or AR glasses at an actual ruin, like the Athenian Acropolis, you can point your device at a field of scattered marble blocks and see a complete, digitally reconstructed Parthenon superimposed over the ruins. It effectively acts as a visual time machine, peeling back the layers of destruction and allowing the imagination to be guided by hard archaeological data. The educational potential of these tools is limitless. They democratize access to history, making World Heritage sites available to students in underfunded schools or individuals with physical disabilities that prevent travel. Imagine a lesson on ancient Egypt where children can not only read about a pyramid but actually put on a headset and navigate its narrow passageways, discovering the burial chamber for themselves. This active, exploratory learning creates lasting memories and sparks curiosity in a way that passive reading rarely can. Furthermore, these digital models become a permanent archive, a backup copy of our cultural heritage. In a world where sites are threatened by war, climate change, and urbanization, having a high-resolution digital record means that even if the worst should happen, the memory of a place is not lost forever. It can be rebuilt, studied, and experienced by generations to come. This is no longer just about preserving artifacts. It's about preserving the immersive essence of entire civilizations, ensuring that the wonders of the human past remain a living, breathing part of our collective future. Why do great civilizations, after centuries of flourishing, suddenly vanish? It's a question that has haunted historians and archaeologists for generations, and the answers are rarely as simple as a single catastrophic event. Instead, the collapse of a complex society is usually a slow-motion unraveling, a cascade of failures where multiple pressures converge to push a system beyond its breaking point. Scholars have developed several compelling frameworks to understand this process, and by examining these theories through the lens of real-world examples, we can start to see patterns emerge, patterns that hold unsettling relevance for our own world today. One of the most influential perspectives comes from geographer and historian Jared Diamond, who argues that environmental degradation often plays the central role in collapse. In his work, he identifies 5 key factors that can contribute to a society's downfall: environmental damage, climate change, hostile neighbors, loss of trading partners, and a society's own failure to adapt to its environmental problems. The story of Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, is perhaps his most famous and cautionary case study. This remote Pacific island was once home to a sophisticated Polynesian culture that produced the iconic moe, those massive stone heads that gaze solemnly inland. The island was once covered in a lush palm forest, but as the population grew, the trees were cut down at an unsustainable rate. They were used for everything from canoe building and transporting the moe to firewood and housing. Deforestation led to massive soil erosion, which crippled agriculture. Without trees, they could no longer build seafaring canoes to access deep water fish, collapsing their protein supply. The result was a catastrophic ecological and social breakdown, leading to famine, warfare, and a dramatic population decline. The society that built these incredible monuments essentially consumed itself into oblivion, trapped on an island with nowhere to go and no way to reverse the damage they had inflicted upon their own life support system. But environmental collapse alone isn't always the sole culprit. Archaeologist Joseph Tainter offers a different, equally fascinating theory centered on social and economic complexity. In his view, societies solve problems by increasing their complexity, adding new layers of bureaucracy, developing new technologies, creating more specialized roles. Initially, this yields high returns, but eventually they hit a point of diminishing returns. The cost of maintaining that complexity, the energy required to support the priests, soldiers, administrators, and nobles who don't directly produce food becomes too great. The system becomes top-heavy, brittle, and vulnerable to any shock. The Roman Empire is often cited as an example. To hold its vast territory together, it needed a massive army, an extensive road network, and a complex administrative bureaucracy. Funding this apparatus required ever-increasing taxes, which eventually stifled economic growth and bred resentment among the population. When faced with external pressures like invading tribes or internal pressures like political instability, the empire simply couldn't adapt quickly or efficiently enough. The cost of maintaining the Roman way of life finally exceeded its benefits, leading to a fragmentation that simpler, less complex societies on its borders could weather more easily. Often, it's the interplay of these factors that delivers the final blow. Take the classic Maya collapse around 900 CE. It wasn't one thing that ended their dominance of the Yucatan Peninsula. It was a perfect storm of crises. Paleoclimatologists studying lake bed sediments and stalagmites have found clear evidence of a series of severe, multi-decade droughts that coincided exactly with the Maya's decline. This environmental stress, likely driven by shifts in regional climate patterns, would have decimated maize agriculture, the foundation of their civilization. But the drought alone didn't cause the collapse. It exacerbated the existing social and political tensions within the Maya world. Their society was highly competitive, with city-states constantly engaged in warfare to capture prisoners for ritual sacrifice and to assert dominance. As water and food became scarcer, this warfare likely intensified, becoming more desperate and destructive. Furthermore, the ruling elite, who derived their power from their perceived ability to communicate with the gods and ensure rain and plenty, would have seen their authority completely undermined by the unending drought. The population, facing famine and losing faith in their leaders, may have simply abandoned the great ceremonial centers, dispersing into smaller, more sustainable communities in the jungle. The collapse wasn't an extinction. It was a dramatic simplification, a retreat from grandeur that was forced by an environment that could no longer support the political complexity the Maya had built. These historical case studies are not just academic exercises, they are stark lessons in resilience. They force us to ask critical questions about our own globalized society. Are we, like the Easter Islanders, overexploiting our critical resources with a focus on short-term gain? Are we, like the Romans, building systems of such immense complexity that they become fragile and inefficient, vulnerable to cascading failures? The challenges we face today, climate change, resource depletion, economic inequality, are frighteningly similar to the pressures that felled past civilizations. The key difference is that our civilization is global. Our island is planet Earth. There is no new world to escape to, no untouched frontier to exploit. The lesson from the past is not one of inevitable doom, but rather a powerful warning about the necessity of long-term thinking and adaptive management. It highlights the critical need to build flexibility into our systems, to invest in sustainable practices, and to foster social cohesion. The past shows us that collapse occurs when a society fails to recognize and respond to the existential threats it faces. Our greatest advantage is that we have the ability to read this history, to see the patterns, and if we choose, to learn from them. For all the incredible progress we've made in pulling lost civilizations back into the light, history is far from a solved puzzle. In fact, some of the most tantalizing enigmas remain stubbornly locked away. their secrets preserved not under sand but in the realm of pure mystery. These are the cases that defy easy explanation, the archaeological cold cases that continue to captivate and frustrate researchers in equal measure, reminding us that for every question we answer, two more seem to emerge from the shadows. Consider the haunting mystery of the Roanoke colony. In 1587, a group of about 115 English settlers established a foothold on the coast of what is now North Carolina. Their governor, John White, sailed back to England for supplies, but his return was delayed for 3 years by war. When he finally made it back to Roanoke Island in 1590, the settlement was completely deserted. There was no sign of a struggle, no mass grave, just a single cryptic clue, the word Croatoan carved into a wooden post and crow etched into a tree. This wasn't a random scrawl. Croatoan was the name of a nearby island and the tribe that lived there. The settlers had a pre-arranged plan to leave a Maltese cross carving if they were in danger, but that was absent. So what happened? Did they simply integrate with the Croatoan people? Later reports from other English explorers mentioned sightings of grey-eyed natives and village structures resembling English cottages, but no definitive evidence has ever been found. The dense, swampy landscape and centuries of subsequent development have obscured the trail, leaving the fate of the lost colony as one of America's oldest and most enduring historical puzzles. Then there is the riddle writ in stone on the Salisbury Plain in England. Stonehenge is so iconic that we often forget how profoundly strange it is. We know the how better than ever. Geochemical analysis has traced the massive bluestones to quarries in Wales, 250 kilometers away, and experiments have shown they could have been moved on sledges and rollers. We know the when, with construction occurring in stages from around 3,000 to 2,000 years before the Common Era, but the why remains utterly elusive. Was it a celestial calculator, its massive trilithons aligned with the solstices to mark the passing seasons for an agricultural society? Was it a place of healing, a Neolithic Lourdes where people traveled great distances to be near the bluestones they believed had curative powers? Or was it primarily a cemetery, a domain of the dead, as the many human remains found nearby suggest? The truth is, it was likely all these things and more at different points in its long history. Its purpose evolved, leaving us with a layered puzzle that no single theory can completely explain. Perhaps no mystery from the Bronze Age is more compelling than the identity of the so-called Sea Peoples. Ancient Egyptian temple walls at Medinet Habu depict a series of epic battles fought by Pharaoh Ramesses III around 1175 years before the Common Era. The carvings show his forces defeating a confederation of invaders who arrived in ships and ox-drawn carts, bringing their families with them, a migrating horde on the move. The Egyptians recorded their names, the Peliset, the Shekelesh, the Denyon, and others. These sea peoples are blamed in Egyptian records for toppling empires and burning cities throughout the eastern Mediterranean. The Hittite Empire, a superpower of the age, completely collapsed. Major cities like Ugarit in Syria were sacked and never reoccupied. But who were they? Where did they come from? Were they a cause of the widespread late Bronze Age collapse, or were they a symptom of it? Desperate refugees fleeing their own collapsing homelands, only to clash with the established powers of the day. Some scholars link them to groups from the Aegean or Anatolia, but hard evidence is scarce. They were the ultimate disruptors, appearing from the fog of history, catalyzing a dark age, and then vanishing back into it, leaving behind only their ominous name and the scorched earth of fallen kingdoms. The fascinating thing about these enduring mysteries is that they are not static. We are not just waiting for a lucky break. We are actively hunting for answers with tools our predecessors couldn't have dreamed of. Modern science is applying its full arsenal to these cold cases. At Stonehenge, ground-penetrating radar has recently revealed a vast complex of hidden monuments, burial mounds, and shrines surrounding the stone circle, suggesting it was the beating heart of a much larger ritual landscape. Geneticists are now analyzing the DNA from ancient skeletons found near the monument, hoping to trace where these people came from and solve the puzzle of the builders' origins. In North Carolina, archaeologists are using soil chemistry analysis, testing the earth around old village sites for traces of European metals or materials that might pinpoint where the Roanoke settlers may have relocated. They are also re-examining period maps with spectral imaging technology, looking for hidden markings or corrections that might point to a previously overlooked location. This is the new frontier of historical inquiry, a collaborative effort that brings together chemists, geneticists, satellite technicians, and traditional archaeologists in a shared mission. Yet, for all our technology, some secrets are guarded by time itself. The answers may lie in a scroll yet unread, a shipwreck yet undiscovered on the ocean floor, or a single piece of pottery waiting to be turned over by a trowel. This is what makes history a living, breathing field of study. It's not a closed book of facts to be memorized, but an ongoing investigation, a grand conversation between the present and the past. These unanswered questions are an invitation, a reminder that the next great discovery could be made by anyone, anywhere. They encourage us to look at the world with a sense of wonder and to never stop asking what stories are still waiting silently for their turn to be told. This transformation is perhaps most powerfully illustrated by the story of one man, a 5,000-year-old individual discovered by hikers in the Ertzee Alps in 1991. Ertzee the Iceman, as he came to be known, was a time capsule preserved in glacial ice, but his true story wasn't revealed by the artifacts he carried. It was unlocked by a symphony of scientific disciplines working in concert. His copper axe immediately caught the eye of archaeologists, but it was physicists using mass spectrometry who analyzed the trace elements in that copper, pinpointing its origin to a specific mine in southern Tuscany, revealing unexpected long-distance trade or travel networks in the Alpine region. Chemists then examined the isotopic composition of his tooth enamel and bones. The water we drink and the food we eat leaves a specific geochemical signature based on the local geology, a signature that is locked into our bodies. By reading these isotopes, scientists could trace Ertzee's life journey. They discovered he was born south of what is now the village of Feldthurns, but spent his adult life in a valley several hours' walk to the north, a level of biographical detail previously unimaginable for someone from his era. Perhaps the most personal insights came from the field of biomedicine. Geneticists sequenced Ertzee's entire genome, discovering he had a predisposition for heart disease, lactose intolerance, and was infected with the bacteria that causes Lyme disease. Pathologists using advanced CT scanning even identified the meal he ate before his death, ibex meat and grains, and determined the exact cause of his demise, an arrowhead lodged in his shoulder that severed a major artery. This interdisciplinary portrait doesn't just show us a frozen body, it introduces us to a man. We know where he came from, what ailed him, what he carried, what he ate, and how he died. He is no longer an anonymous relic but a human being with a story, and that story was written not in history books, but in his very DNA, his bones, and the chemistry of his possessions. This powerful synergy extends far beyond a single individual to rewrite entire chapters of human migration. For generations, archaeologists relied solely on material culture, the style of pottery, the design of tools, to track the movement of peoples. This was an imperfect method, as styles can be copied and traded without people themselves moving. The advent of ancient DNA analysis has cut through this ambiguity with stunning clarity. The sequencing of Neanderthal DNA, for instance, did more than just confirm they were a separate species. It revealed a profound and intimate connection. Geneticists found that most people of non-African descent carry between 1 and 4% Neanderthal DNA in their genomes, evidence of interbreeding that occurred after early Homo sapiens migrated out of Africa. This single finding fundamentally altered our understanding of human evolution, proving that our ancestors didn't simply replace other hominins, but interacted with them in deeply significant ways. This genetic detective work has been equally revolutionary for more recent periods. The peopling of the Pacific Islands was one of archaeology's great puzzles. How did humans, starting from Southeast Asia, manage to navigate and settle thousands of remote islands, from Hawaii to Easter Island to New Zealand? Linguistic and archaeological evidence provided theories, but ancient DNA from skeletal remains has provided the definitive roadmap. By analyzing the genomes of both ancient and modern Polynesians, geneticists have been able to trace the timing and direction of this incredible migration, confirming the express train model that suggests a rapid expansion eastward, and even detecting a trace of contact with indigenous South Americans before European arrival, a possibility once dismissed as fantasy. The genes act as a passport, stamping the journey of these intrepid voyagers across the vast ocean, confirming the oral histories that have been passed down for generations. Even the seemingly mundane question of what ancient people ate has been revolutionized by chemistry. Stable isotope analysis, particularly of carbon and nitrogen, allows scientists to read diet directly from human bones and teeth. Different food sources, whether marine fish, terrestrial plants, or domesticated animals, leave distinct isotopic ratios in our collagen. By analyzing skeletons from a prehistoric burial site, researchers can now determine if a community was primarily agricultural or relied on hunting and gathering, if they ate fish from the river, or if there was a social hierarchy in access to certain foods, with elites consuming more meat than the commoners. This moves us beyond guessing from garbage pits and gives us a direct line to the nutritional realities and social structures of everyday life in the distant past. This collaborative spirit is the new frontier of archaeology. It is no longer a solitary pursuit of the trowel but a team sport, where the physicist operating a particle accelerator to analyze the composition of a bronze dagger is just as important as the historian who can place it in its cultural context. The geneticist extracting DNA from a petrous bone and the linguist studying the evolution of ancient languages now work side by side, their once separate data streams merging into a single, powerful river of understanding. This interdisciplinary approach is dismantling old assumptions and building a new, more nuanced and profoundly human story of our past, proving that the answers to history's greatest mysteries often lie not in a single field of study, but in the spaces where they all meet. If we think the technological leaps of the last 20 years have been revolutionary, we are merely standing on the threshold. The next few decades promise a transformation so profound that the very definition of archaeology will be rewritten, moving from a science of careful recovery to one of near-instantaneous planetary-scale revelation. The future of discovery lies not in bigger shovels, but in smarter algorithms and sensors that can perceive the world in ways our own senses never could. We are about to give the past a voice that can be heard across entire continents. At the forefront of this coming revolution is the power of artificial intelligence, specifically machine learning. We've seen how crowdsourcing can analyze satellite imagery, but that is a trickle of data compared to the flood that AI can process. Imagine training a neural network on every known archaeological feature on Earth, the distinct spectral signature of Maya canals, the subtle elevation changes of Roman roads, the magnetic anomalies of Viking longhouses. This AI would then be unleashed upon petabytes of satellite and aerial survey data covering the entire globe. It wouldn't just find sites we're looking for. It would detect patterns and correlations invisible to the human eye, identifying entirely new types of settlements or land use we never thought to search for. It could cross-reference geological data, historical climate models, and ancient trade routes to generate predictive maps of where undiscovered cities are most likely to be found, turning the planet into a vast, decipherable puzzle. This AI-driven analysis will be the key to unlocking the last great terrestrial frontiers, and no place is more emblematic of that than the Amazon rainforest. For generations, the prevailing narrative was of a pristine wilderness, only sparsely inhabited by small, nomadic tribes. That view is already crumbling under the evidence of vast, complex societies that managed the jungle with sophisticated agroforestry and built enormous earthworks. The next step is a project of breathtaking ambition, a comprehensive AI-assisted LiDAR scan of the entire Amazon basin. The logistical and financial challenges are immense, but the potential payoff is the complete rewriting of the human history of the Americas. We could discover that the Amazon was not a green desert but a managed garden, dotted with thousands of interconnected towns and cities that supported populations in the millions, a civilization that thrived for millennia and then vanished, leaving the forest to reclaim their works. This wouldn't just be about finding lost cities. It would be a vital lesson in sustainable living from the deep past, offering crucial insights for our own future. Beyond our own planet, a new and utterly unexpected frontier is opening up: space archaeology, not for finding alien ruins, but for understanding the ultimate extremes of human adaptation. As organizations like NASA and private companies plan for sustained human presence on the Moon and eventually Mars, archaeologists are being called upon from the very beginning. Their role is to establish the methodologies for studying off-world human settlement from the moment the first habitat is deployed. How will future archaeologists distinguish between a discarded tool and a ritual object when both are made of advanced polymers and composites? How do you define a site formation process in the 1/6 gravity of the Moon? These are not science fiction questions. By creating archaeological protocols for space, we are forced to re-examine our most fundamental assumptions about what material culture is and how it is created. Furthermore, studying the Martian environment, a planet that experienced its own dramatic climate change and loss of surface water billions of years ago, provides a powerful analog for understanding how climate shifts can render a planet uninhabitable. The lessons we learn from a dead planet may hold the key to understanding the collapses of civilizations on our own living one. Perhaps the most futuristic tool on the horizon is quantum sensing. This technology, which leverages the bizarre properties of quantum mechanics, promises to do for underground mapping what LiDAR did for seeing through forests. Devices like quantum gravimeters are so sensitive they can detect minute variations in the Earth's gravitational pull caused by voids underground, such as tombs or chambers, or by dense structures like buried walls. Unlike ground-penetrating radar, which can be defeated by certain soil conditions, quantum sensing could peer deeper and with far greater resolution, effectively giving us X-ray vision into the Earth. Deployed from drones or vehicles, these sensors could map entire buried cities in a single pass, creating perfect three-dimensional models of sites like the complete network of Etruscan tombs in Italy or the undiscovered chambers beneath the Giza Plateau without ever breaking the surface. Yet with this incredible power comes profound responsibility. The ethical and practical challenges will be immense. The ability to find everything, everywhere, immediately could overwhelm our capacity to protect it. If an AI generates a map of 1,000,000 new sites, how do we prioritize which ones to study and protect from the immediate threats of looting and development? The technology itself could also become a tool for looters, who could use these same advanced sensors to pinpoint and ransack sites with terrifying efficiency before authorities are even aware they exist. Furthermore, the very act of discovery carries a colonial weight. Identifying a vast ancient city in the Amazon has immediate implications for the indigenous communities who live there today and who may have their own deep cultural connection to that land. The future of archaeology cannot be a repeat of the past, where outsiders arrive with advanced technology to extract a culture's heritage. It must be a collaborative effort, developed and deployed with the full partnership and consent of local and descendant communities, ensuring that the benefits of discovery are shared and that the stories these technologies uncover are told with respect and nuance. The greatest discovery of the next century may not be a golden city or a pharaoh's tomb, but a new, more equitable and sustainable way of listening to the whispers of the past, ensuring that in our quest to understand those who came before us, we build a better future for those who will come after. Behind every groundbreaking discovery, behind every map of a lost city and every deciphered script, there is a person. Not a stereotypical figure in a dusty fedora, but a modern explorer driven by an insatiable curiosity, a relentless work ethic, and a profound respect for the whispers of the past. The story of archaeology is at its heart a collection of human stories, tales of passion, perseverance, and those rare, electrifying moments when the fog of centuries suddenly clears. To understand how we uncover lost worlds, we must first meet the diverse and dedicated individuals who have devoted their lives to the search. Consider the journey of Sarah Parcak, a pioneer who quite literally took the search for the past into orbit. As a child, she was captivated by the adventures of Indiana Jones, but she found her own calling not in a whip, but in the power of data. Her specialization, known as space archaeology, involves analyzing high-resolution satellite imagery to detect subtle traces of ancient human activity invisible from the ground. The work is often painstaking, spent staring at a computer screen for hours, looking for the faint spectral signatures of buried mud brick or the ghostly outlines of eroded walls. Her eureka moment came not in a dramatic dig, but through meticulous analysis. In Egypt, by examining infrared satellite imagery, she and her team identified what appeared to be a massive, previously unknown structure near the city of Tanis. The potential discovery was staggering, but the real challenge was yet to come: securing funding, assembling a team, and traveling to the site to see if the pixels on her screen translated into reality. The moment of truth, watching local work crews begin to excavate and confirming the presence of the structure exactly where her data predicted, was a validation of a new way of seeing. Her work demonstrates that the next great explorer might be someone who discovers a pharaoh's tomb without ever leaving their office, proving that the tools of discovery are constantly evolving. For others, the call to adventure is answered not in the digital realm, but in the silent, weightless world beneath the waves. Frank Godio's story is one of patience and partnership with the sea. A former financial advisor, he followed his passion for underwater exploration, founding the Institut Européen d'Archéologie sous-marine. His most famous work, the rediscovery of the ancient Egyptian cities of Thonis, Heracleion, and Canopus, submerged in the Mediterranean for over 1,000 years, was the culmination of years of historical research and systematic surveying. The challenges here are immense and deeply physical. Divers must contend with strong currents, limited visibility, and the immense logistical complexity of working on the seafloor. The eureka moments in marine archaeology are slow, deliberate, and often surreal. It might be the gentle brushing away of silt to reveal the serene face of a colossal statue of a pharaoh, lying perfectly preserved where it fell millennia ago. Or it could be the careful recovery of a delicate gold earring or an inscribed stone slab that finally confirms the identity of a legendary city. Godio's work requires a unique blend of historical scholarship, cutting-edge technology, and the courage of a deep-sea diver, a testament to the fact that some of our greatest treasures are waiting in the most unforgiving environments. These stories are not just about individual genius, they are about immense, often unglamorous, dedication. An archaeologist's life is frequently one of discomfort, long seasons spent in blistering heat or biting cold, living in remote field camps, battling insects, and enduring months away from family. The work is physically demanding, involving careful excavation with trowels and brushes, moving tons of soil by hand, and the endless tasks of washing, sorting, and cataloging thousands of fragments of pottery and stone. For every day of thrilling discovery, there are weeks of tedious but essential labor. The financial reality can be just as challenging, with many researchers spending as much time writing grant proposals as they do on excavation, constantly hustling to secure the funding that makes their work possible. This profession demands a special kind of resilience, a deep-seated passion that fuels the perseverance needed to overcome logistical nightmares, funding shortfalls, and the simple, frustrating reality that you might spend an entire season digging and find nothing more exciting than a post hole. It is a calling built on the unwavering belief that the next scrape of the trowel could change history, yet the impact of their work extends far beyond academic journals. Every time an archaeologist like Sarah Parcak or Frank Godio makes a discovery, they do more than just add to our knowledge. They inspire a new generation to look at the world with wonder. They show young people, especially those from underrepresented backgrounds, that science is an adventure open to everyone, whether your tool is a satellite, a submersible, or a simple trowel. They humanize the past, transforming abstract dates into tangible stories of people who loved, built, struggled, and dreamed just as we do. Their journeys remind us that curiosity is a powerful force, that perseverance is rewarded, and that the greatest mysteries are not meant to stay hidden forever. They are the bridge builders, connecting us to our shared human heritage and ensuring that the voices from beneath the sand are not just found, but are finally heard. Perhaps the most exciting aspect of archaeology today is that the adventure is no longer reserved for professionals with doctorates and decades of field experience. The gates to the past have been thrown wide open, inviting anyone with a spark of curiosity to become an active participant in the greatest detective story of all time. You don't need a trowel or a travel budget to start your journey. You can begin from the comfort of your own home by diving into the incredible wealth of digital resources now available. Major universities and institutions around the world offer free online courses on platforms like Coursera and edX, covering everything from the pyramids of ancient Egypt to the sunken cities of the Mediterranean. These aren't just dry lectures, they're immersive experiences taught by leading experts, often featuring interactive 3D models and virtual site visits that bring the material to life. After you've soaked up some knowledge, you can put it to the test by joining a citizen science project. Websites like Zooniverse host ongoing archaeological research where you can help professionals analyze real data, from classifying pottery shards in dig photos to scanning satellite imagery for the telltale signs of buried structures. You could be the one to spot the faint outline of a forgotten Roman villa or a Native American settlement, making a genuine contribution to our collective understanding of history from your own laptop. Of course, some experiences are best had in person, and you might be surprised by the treasures hiding in plain sight. Your local history museum or state archaeological society is a fantastic and often overlooked starting point. These institutions are passionate about engaging the public and frequently host guest lectures, workshops on identifying artifacts, and even guided tours of local sites of interest. Many also organize volunteer opportunities for local digs or lab work, where you can learn proper techniques for cleaning, cataloging, and preserving finds under the guidance of professionals. This hands-on experience is invaluable, offering a tangible connection to the past and the meticulous process of piecing it together. For a deeper dive, numerous organizations run archaeological field schools both domestically and abroad that welcome absolute beginners. These programs provide thorough training and allow you to spend a week or more working on an active excavation, living and learning alongside archaeologists. It's a physically demanding but incredibly rewarding way to truly understand what goes into uncovering history, layer by careful layer. For those whose passion is ignited by storytelling, an entire universe of books, documentaries, and podcasts awaits to fuel your imagination. Start with authors like Sarah Parcak, whose book, Archaeology from Space, brilliantly demystifies how modern technology is revolutionizing the field, or Eric H. Klein's 1177 B.C., The Year Civilization Collapsed, a gripping archaeological thriller about the real-life Bronze Age apocalypse. Documentary series from the BBC, PBS Nova, and National Geographic offer breathtaking visual journeys to lost cities and feature the latest discoveries, often presented by charismatic experts who convey their excitement directly to the viewer. And when travel isn't possible, virtual reality and comprehensive online archives offer the next best thing. You can take a fully immersive 360-degree tour of the tomb of Pharaoh Ramesses VI in Egypt, wander the streets of ancient Rome through detailed digital reconstructions, or explore the British Museum's entire collection online, zooming in on high-resolution images of artifacts from every corner of the globe. If you are able to travel, you can transform your next vacation into a personal archaeological expedition by embracing the principles of responsible tourism. Choose to visit sites that are managed with preservation in mind, often indicated by UNESCO World Heritage status. When you're there, follow the guidelines, stay on marked paths, don't touch fragile murals or carvings, and never, ever remove anything from the site, not even a small potsherd. That artifact's true value lies in the context of its location, and taking it erases a piece of the puzzle forever. Consider hiring local guides. Their knowledge and personal connection to the history and culture will add immense depth to your visit, and your patronage directly supports the community that acts as the site's guardian. Your choices as a consumer also have power. Be mindful of the souvenirs you buy and avoid anything that could be an ancient artifact or encourage the looting of cultural heritage. Finally, you can support the work of preservation even from afar by donating to organizations like the Archaeological Institute of America or the Global Heritage Fund, which work tirelessly to protect and conserve endangered sites around the world for future generations. Whether your interest is academic, hands-on, or simply born of a love for great stories, there is a path for you into archaeology. The past is not a closed book but an open invitation, waiting for you to turn the page. Ultimately, the relentless pursuit of these lost worlds does far more than just satisfy our curiosity about bygone eras. It fundamentally reshapes our understanding of what it means to be human. Every time a new city is mapped beneath the jungle canopy or a forgotten script is finally deciphered, we are handed another piece of a vast, global mosaic of human experience. This mosaic reveals a stunning truth about our species, our innate ingenuity, our profound diversity, and our incredible resilience in the face of challenges are not modern inventions. They are the very threads that have been woven through the entire tapestry of human history, from the hydraulic engineers of the Sahara to the celestial navigators of the Pacific. These discoveries provide a crucial long-term context for the global issues we face today, from climate change to societal collapse. They show us that our current moment is not an isolated event but part of a long, complex story of adaptation and response. By studying how past civilizations navigated environmental shifts, managed resources, and fostered social cohesion, or failed to do so, we gain a deeper, more nuanced perspective on the challenges and choices that define our own time. Moreover, this expanding narrative powerfully challenges the outdated, Eurocentric view of history that has dominated for centuries. The story of human progress is not a straight line that leads from ancient Greece and Rome to the modern West. It is a sprawling, interconnected web of innovation and influence. The sophisticated urban planning of the Indus Valley civilization, the mathematical and astronomical breakthroughs of the Maya, the vast trade networks of the Garamantes, these achievements stand as monumental testaments to civilizations that were often ignored or minimized by traditional historical accounts. By bringing their contributions to light, we are not just correcting the historical record, we are actively building a more inclusive and accurate understanding of our collective past. This process validates the rich heritage of cultures around the world and helps to dismantle the hierarchies that have been used to justify inequality and prejudice. It reminds us that genius and complexity are not the birthright of any one people or place, but are a universal human potential. This journey into the past also cultivates essential skills for the future. The careful, evidence-based work of archaeology is a masterclass in critical thinking. It teaches us to question assumptions, to weigh sources, and to understand that history is not a set of fixed facts but a constantly evolving interpretation based on new evidence. Perhaps even more importantly, engaging with these lost civilizations fosters a profound sense of empathy. When we look at the fingerprint preserved in a 5,000-year-old piece of pottery, or walk the digitally reconstructed streets of a city swallowed by the sea, we are connecting with the daily lives of individuals who loved, worked, and dreamed just as we do. They cease to be abstract concepts and become real people. This connection across millennia breaks down the barriers of otherness and builds a powerful sense of global citizenship. We begin to see ourselves not just as citizens of a single nation, but as part of a long, continuous, and shared human story. In the end, the sand, the jungle, and the sea have been keeping a detailed diary of humanity's greatest triumphs and most humbling failures. Preserving and studying this shared heritage is not an academic luxury. It is an essential act of stewardship for future generations. The lessons etched in stone and buried in earth are a priceless resource, a library of human experience offering infinite wisdom on sustainability, innovation, and community. The story of these lost civilizations is not just about where we have been, it is an indispensable guide for where we are going, reminding us that the choices we make today will one day become the layers of history that others will work to understand.